I'm your worst nightmare.
So I was doing research for a new Sylvester Stallone video, which, shocking, yeah, it's not a Van Damme video. Can you believe it? The next video is not Van Damme, it's Stallone. But I came across this, and it's such a great idea. I'm glad they're doing it. I like the Mortal Kombat games. They've always did a good job of implementing different types of characters from popular culture. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about that. I'm also going to give you the history of the Rambo games. They weren't the best games, but I still have my Rambo 2 from the Sega Master System. I actually still play. But in general, the Rambo games weren't that great, but I'm happy in the Mortal Kombat we're going to actually get a chance to get to use the character. It's a great game. It's going to be a good game. And why not? He's got such an arsenal of weapons. He's got the machine gun shown in the trailer. He's got his bow and arrow with those explosive tips I'm sure they'll implement from Rambo 2. Speaking of the character, it looks like the version from Rambo 2, which is my favorite Rambo of all the Rambos, so I'm glad they have that version in there. He's got, okay, so we got the machine gun. We got the explosive tipped arrows. I'm sure they'll implement his knife and maybe even his jumping spin kick from Rambo 3. But anyway, stay tuned in the video. We'll talk about the history of Rambo games. So the Mortal Kombat games, like I mentioned, have a long history of including several characters from pop culture you ordinarily wouldn't expect. For example, in this latest game, Mortal Kombat 11, the Kombat Pack for it included characters such as the Joker, Spawn, and the Terminator. The Aftermath Pack added RoboCop, and this latest Kombat Pack 2 will include John Rambo. There's extra bonus content such as these Kombat Packs are really what gets casual gamers excited, such as myself. I'll definitely have to pick that up for the Rambo alone. The cool thing is that Sylvester Stallone is actually doing the voice.
I'm your worst nightmare.
For the Terminator character, they didn't end up getting Arnold Schwarzenegger to do the voice, though the guy did kind of sound like him at least.
You will be terminated.
I think it'd be really cool if they got John Matrix from Commando, as I'm sure many gamers want to pit Rambo against Commando. That's been a topic of debate for a long time as far as like film geeks go. Who's better, Rambo or Commando? Well, I think it's Rambo, but that's my opinion. As far as Rambo games go, here's a quick history. 1985, there was a game based on Rambo First Blood Part 2 by Ocean Software for the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, and the Commodore 64. It received positive reviews at the time and was number 2 in the UK sales charts. It's an overhead shoot-'em-up and it follows the movie's story. The game was one of the first to feature controllable vehicles like a helicopter, and also one of the first games to feature stealth elements. A year later, in 1986, the game that I have, that Sega Master System one, Rambo First Blood Part 2, this one's loosely based on a film. You can play co-op with the other character named Zane. Zane, of course, is not in the movie, but as a kid, I always pretended he was that helicopter pilot, played by Sensei Kreese from The Karate Kid, the guy that Rambo kneed in the balls. But you think it would have made sense if they would have used the woman Ko that he did team up with the movie, but this game wasn't originally designed from the ground up as a Rambo game. This game was originally released in Japan as Ashura, but localized for the American market after Sega acquired the license for Rambo 2, so the main character was then redesigned as Rambo. I certainly wouldn't have had any interest, especially as a kid at the time, if I couldn't play as Rambo. So, smart move on Sega's part to make it a Rambo game. It's actually pretty fun, which is why, like I mentioned, I still play it today, but I wouldn't play it back then or even now if it wasn't a Rambo game. Then in 1987, Acclaim would put out a side-scrolling Rambo game for the original Nintendo. I never had this game growing up, but played it at a friend's house. I always thought it sucked, especially compared to my Sega Master System version. For example, you just end up fighting spiders and other forest creatures. Apparently closer to the end of the game, you do fight enemy soldiers, but neither of us ever made it that far. We apparently sucked as players as much as the game sucked. Just one big suckfest there all around. This one would also be based off of Rambo First Blood Part 2, since the game starts off with Colonel Trautman asking Rambo if he wants to leave prison and start the mission. If you select no, the game doesn't proceed, so you can't even play it, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It'd be kind of like not watching that Welcome to Sudden Death movie with Michael J. White. Check out the video I did on that, by the way, yesterday. Compared to the original, man, the original is such a masterpiece. In 1989, the Sega Genesis would get Rambo 3, based off of Rambo 3, of course. The game's controlled from an overhead perspective, but later switched to a view from just behind Rambo for some of the boss battles. I actually never played this one, though it doesn't look bad. Either way, it's safe to say Sega definitely had the better Rambo games. After that, the Rambo games would go on a hiatus, just like the films, until 2008 when Sega would release the light gun shooter in the arcades based on the first 3 Rambo films. The arcade cabinet features a 62-inch screen. This one actually has pretty good graphics, and I did play it at Dave & Buster's. I really enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. It overall provided a decent representation of feeling like you're in the movies, doing what John Rambo does best. Then in 2014, Rambo the video game, based off of the first 3 films, was released. It was released on Microsoft Windows as well as Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I remember seeing pictures of it when it was in development at the time, and I was pretty excited. But the pictures were deceiving. It looked like it was going to be a first-person shooter, but ended up being a rail shooter. So even though the pictures make it look like a first-person shooter, you can't actually control where you're going. You're just taken for the ride while limited to controlling the aim of your gun. According to several reviews, that ride isn't exactly very fun, with Destructoid saying the game was a, quote, unpolished, uninspired, on-rails light gun game, and that even the act of shooting doesn't feel impactful or fun. Kind of sounds like they're describing a lot of martial arts movies that don't star Jean-Claude Van Damme, not impactful or fun. Which I talk about in my Why Jean-Claude Van Damme is the Best On-Screen Fighter video. Make sure to check that out. I'll link that in the description below. So overall, the Rambo video games in general left a lot to be desired, which is no surprise because usually game adaptations of films are not that good. The Mortal Kombat games are solid, and their inclusion of Rambo, voiced by Sylvester Stallone like I mentioned, is probably going to be the best we're going to get as far as being able to play as our favorite special forces Green Beret, even though it doesn't take place in the Rambo universe. At least we get to be the character in a well-developed game. Anyway, let me know in the comments section if you played any of these Rambo games, if you're excited about his inclusion in the Mortal Kombat universe, and also who else would you like to see in the Mortal Kombat games?